All right. Well, welcome in, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to spend this evening with me and with others, and to lean into these rememberings, as we like to call them. For those of you who are new to me and our community, I am Chivito, which is translates as little goat, which is a name that my teachers, these elders, actually playfully gave to me, and I I'm still growing into it, that's for sure. And I help facilitate what we call Tree of Totems, which is this a cultural community of who I call misfits and nature lovers. And we have both indigenous and non-indigenous elders and people of various traditions and various lands, and we're all coming together to piece back these, we might call these more ancestral ways of living, with the earth as an extension of nature, a way of really blooming back into this greater mythic experience of life, where we're breaking free from the literal colonized lens. um as my one of my mentors, Ben, mm, beautiful Hopi elder, he's passed now, and really feeling his passing. It was right around this time, and he shared we are all indigenous of earth. The plants, the waters, the sky, there, that's what our bodies are made of. And he says it's time we help each other remember how we are of the earth, and to restore what he called this like earth psychology, which is what might be called an indigenous psychology, which is this way that weaves us back into these original ways of living that nourishes us, right? And replenishes life. In this, with tree totems, we're starting to begin these rituals of reconciliation and healing with the land, with our indigenous relatives of these lands, and with this wound that we all have inside of us of feeling disconnected and orphaned from our greater belonging that has always been, but it has become fractured in our memory. And so in tonight's virtual council fire, right, we are leaning into some potent questions. And afterwards, we're going to invite you to share in your reflections and be in dialogue, and let the conversations stir these remembrances that are ready to come to surface for us, to speak to us. And some of these questions we are leaning into here is, how can we tap back into what like the Brujeria Mexico call the river beneath the river, or what the Old Norse call the well of memories. Right, we're trailing these song lines back to what the Navajo call these original instructions given to us by Creator. Hmm. And in that, it's a way of restoring, a way of living as a part of the earth. Right? And we're going to lean into like, what is the distinct difference between a colonized versus indigenous psychology, and how can we begin to break these spells of this colonial mind that separates us, so we can restore more of this earth psychology? And how may we actually tune into what is this mythic quality of mind that actually draws out these deeper meanings in our life? These are some in-depth areas we're going to explore. Now, here's the thing, and many people forget this because we're not taught it, but we forget that if we trail back, our ancestry far enough, we each come to a people who live closely with the land, who lived as an extension of the land. And there was a sense of belonging there, a sense of identity, sense of understanding. And they live with a more mythic perspective that created these deeper meanings into the cyclic changes of their life, that enabled them to create these happenings of life with greater clarity, with intention, with beauty, with a way of honoring, right? In other words, this knowledge of being of the earth is in our bone memory. Like we are all indigenous of earth, as Ben would share. And so that memory of being connected into the earth, it's right there with us. And so it isn't about learning. It isn't about gathering information. It's really about having the experiences and the conversations that stir these remembrances inside of us so we can shift back into that way of living. For example, across the world, the seasons have been personalized, right? For example, winter and autumn, they weren't just merely seasons of weather, but each season housed, specific elemental energies that influenced us. Right? Autumn is the goddess that brings color and beauty to the world before it slumbers and is withdrawn back within itself, or before we enter the afterlife. Right? It gave us reference for entering the later stages of life, and it was a time to share in the beauty, the stories, the songs, right? The gifts that your life afforded you. And therefore it was a way of both giving back to the people and to the land, as well as a way of harvesting your own life so you may transition into the next, become a good ancestor, right? Winter became old winter's hut that hosted the council of ancestors, right? Those people who came before us. And so it was an honored time to come close in and reflect, to speak to and listen into the ancestors, to pay attention to dreams, to grieve tend the losses of the previous year, right? To heal and to find that new inspiration in the seeds that begin to germinate in that winter time that is ready to emerge with us in the spring. See, in this, we see how each season they actually had particular rituals, particular kinds of feast, types of foods that actually prepared our body for the shifting of seasons. It had particular stories and activities that connected us into these deeper meanings of life. And therefore, it empowered us to greet life with this greater clarity, this beauty, this intention. Right? We flowed in relationship. And it's likely you can feel how living in this way had a way to how it nourished and supported the movement of life. In contrast to our modern systems that, you know, where the seasons are, they seem to be more of a backdrop, almost more of a nuance, a nuisance that we have to move through, right? Instead of listening and tuning into what each season offers us and what each season is inviting us into, we attempt to be more like this unchanging cog in a machine wheel, always operating at that same level of production. And therefore, we approach the seasons and we approach our times of change and transition as adversaries. Approach them as adversaries instead of these sacred huts, right, with gifts to offer us. So we fight against nature and we end up depleting ourselves. When, if we readopt this earth psychology, we find how we could be fed by the shifting seasons, the shifting of our life. We can be nourished by the gifts that each of them offer us. Right? We recognized how each season had some type of influence or energy that was moving to support us and help us bloom, those dreamings that we hold within. So there's a beautiful movement of flow. So in this, when we speak of indigenous, and this is really important, it's important to know that we are not solely speaking of like Native American or the Aborigine, Sand Bushman. We're not speaking of the Hopi, the Puyallup, the Utes, right? But we are including this old world way of being in the world that was even found in old Europe. Now, throughout the world, before the pre-Christian colonial world, we all lived as an extension of the land, and therefore each place had their own rich, beautiful cultures and spiritual traditions that wove them into this original way of being. And so they lived in greater balance. Right? And in this, it's important to recognize it's not about romanticizing a single people or even romanticizing ancestral ways. It's really about recognizing the ways that brings us back into a sense of relationship and belonging as an extension of the earth. And these ways that help support us to bloom that which is inside of us that's ready to come through. And why this is important and what we're speaking into here is we can see, and I'm sure you can also recognize this, is that it's only us humans, right? We're the only species that lives as if we are separate from the rest of creation. We're the only species that has this attitude and mindset that we're actually superior to nature. We're the only ones that live out of balance with the land, with our resources. We're the only ones who are in constant conflict with each other's, with ourselves, with the movement of life. You see how us humans, we think we are more advanced and superior because of our technology. But as our technology surpasses our humanity, we may consider how the hour is now late for us two-legged. And you could say that us humans are actually devolving the more modern we get as our technology further disconnects us from the land and each other. This summer, I was able to speak with elders from many different traditions, from Europe to Australia, some on Africa, indigenous elders here, and each one in their own way were given voice to the same thing. And they share that, we have fallen out of our story. We have fallen out of the earth story. And we have become what indigenous cultures call soul loss. We become disconnected, that we have become motherless, orphaned, separated from the mother, right? Earth. And so there's a wound there, and they recognize it. So we are asking, how can we be the people who are helping to heal and restore the ways of living that nourishes life, that replenishes life? How can we be of the people who are helping to restore these ways to nourish life? In this, it's likely you can sense how there's a very sharp distinction between how indigenous or our modern colonized society chooses to fit into the world and the roles we choose to play. You see how our colonized industrial system, it positions us as separate from the rest of creation, and it grooms us to conform and fit into a system that depletes us. There's no honoring of the gifts and the uniqueness that we have to bring in. Now, in contrast, a Mayan shaman shares very beautifully. He shares that the indigenous mind knows that we owe it to the earth. We owe it to the earth to become that part of the song that is missing. He shares the earth wants to put the song back together again. And if we can remember how to be that part of the song that's missing, we bring wholeness back to the earth, back to the people. Right? So here you can sense that something's been forgotten, something we haven't actually been able to really give voice to. And we can see how many people right now are moving and wanting to help restore the song. And we're in a special time where people are really ready to make that shift back to a way of living as an extension of nature and to restore these more mythic perspectives that weaves us into these deeper meanings, these deeper movements of life. But we also can see how few people know how to actually do this in our modern times. How do we become that part of the song that's missing? The Aborigine, of Australia, and they all talk about songs. I love this. And the Aborigine, they speak about trailing the song lines, trailing the song lines that it's a way of coming close in with how they are part of what they call the dreaming. See, many cultures have this common language, this common perspective, right? That we're all part of the earth's dreaming, that we are actually being dreamt into the world. Just like every plant, every animal and insect, it's being dreamt in to fulfill wholeness in the ecology of it all. And they understand that what's calling them into these deeper layers of life, it can't be taught. Rather, there's this organic and this very soul nourishing process of trailing the experiences, the stories, the rituals, the conversations that stir what's just beneath the surface of their being. And it activates their bone memory of how they are that missing part of the song. And so through direct experience, they have a sense of awakening into the knowledge that is theirs. So you can feel this is very different than our colonized ways of trying to attack our learning by consuming information. What we see is blocking most people from restoring these original understandings is that we've been imprisoned in a kind of psychology. And the psychology has been deeply threaded with these stories that actually shames these original ways of being and learning. We've been conditioned, we need to consume knowledge, to be in a constant state of doing, to busy ourselves. And so we are decolonizing our minds. That's what we're leaning into. And we're trying to step back into how do we re-indigenize our hearts. Indigenous cultures believe the heart is the mind. The heart is the mind. But when we fall out of balance, that goes up here, and that's where it becomes diseased. So we're making that shift from learning information and restoring what they call a coming to know. Because when you come to know something, there's relationship. See, at one point, we want to stop searching for more information. We want to stop striving to improve ourselves, stop the addiction of doing and consuming, and instead, we want to merely come close in with the silence of the earth and be held by her again. We want to merely come close in with the silence of the earth and be held by her again. In other words, it's a process of remembering by availing ourselves to these profound experiences that are readily available to us every day by merely listening and being present with nature, with where we are. It's tuning in. As a community here of Tree of Totems, we're making that effort to restore these old world and indigenous ways, these ways of reattuning to what is called earth speech, which holds these ways of remembering through direct experience. through these oral traditions and these stories that they hold with them, these hidden knowledge and teachings that become available to you through the way of listening. Right? We are restoring, coming back into these rituals that engage our whole being, right? In the act that transforms us. We're leaning back in to be a part of these, the kind of conversations that restore what is held in each side, inside of each of us, right? That bone memory. And what we're doing is we want to reattune ourselves with how to learn in a way that we are changed by it. We become part of it so it takes hold and it stewards us. So what we're doing here and what we would love to invite you into, with us, again, we want to say, forget about courses, forget about programs and consuming information. And instead, for those of you who are just coming into the circle, we want to invite you to join us around the virtual fireside. We're gathering around twice a month with these occasional live fires, where we're beginning to bring in the elders and the wisdom keepers, bring in that kind of traditional stories that have that way of speaking into that deeper level of soul, into our bone memory that activates that which is uniquely ready for you. To come with us and journey where we're going out on the land and we're having that felt experience with these power places in nature that hold a mythic remembrance that breaks you open by applying this traditional etiquette, a way of listening, the way of greeting, the way of being in relationship. And in that, by just being part of that conversation and learning how to become part of that conversation again, it's happening all around us all the time. We have that sense of these remembrances taking hold, becoming a part of you, beginning to move you. It's a special experience. So we find that if we don't do this, we find instead of being broken open by life, we're going to continue to break ourselves against life. We're going to deplete ourselves as we try to will ourselves against nature, will ourselves against these mythic qualities of the dreaming that is ever inviting us in. If we don't restore what we call this earth psychology, as Ben said, right, or this indigenous psychology, you can see how we remain in a kind of psychological prison that pits us against ourselves and life, where we deplete ourselves when we could actually flow in rhythm with nature, right? Harnessing the powers of the seasons and how nature is expressing through us, and therefore bloom these dreamings that we hold within, knowing that we are contributing to a greater story, to that greater ecosystem of life that is ever dreaming forward. So in this, what we're doing is, with this journey, is we are trailing the song lines. We're tapping into that river beneath the river where, as that Mayan shaman said, Martin Pachtel, we're becoming part of the people who are helping to heal the earth. We're becoming that part of song that's missing, that brings wholeness to the people. So that's what we're doing. I know many of you are already here joining us with this journey, Earth Speech, which begins next Tuesday, September 13th. And for those of you who are new and you're feeling a resonance with this, I want to invite you can go to our website, treeoftotems.com, and look at Earth Speech Immersion. And this is an invite-only journey. We're always very select on who we invite in to ensure that we're creating a safe and sacred space. So you can email me at learning@treeoftotems.com and introduce yourself and what's resonating for you. And we'll begin that conversation. And we'd love to invite you in by the fireside. Yeah, it's a special group. Misfits. Lots of misfits. What makes it fun. So with that, I would love just to open this up as a circle and kind of reflect in like the sharing. Like what did this stir within you? Like the shift between this earth psychology or indigenous psychology versus how we normally approach life, willing ourselves against life versus this way of leaning in and being in relationship with, or just what came up for you. I'd love to hear your words, hear your reflection. This is that magic. This is where a lot of those unteachable learnings come, is just by the sharing. So we're like pulling our learnings together. Would anyone like to share what came up for them?
Hey, hi everyone, Lois here.
Oh,
Thanks, Chivito. Just listening to you, is like being transported, into that dream world of connection, with the earth and yeah. So I'll listen to the recording again and again and again because I like it. It makes it's so beautifully said, and it I don't know, it makes sense, and more than that, it's really, I feel that it's part of me too. The thing is that I have no idea how to access it, on a naturally,
right.
there's this barrier there, right? The colonized mind and the way of seeing as well. Probably my senses are not attuned to that,
Oh,
and so one thing that in something that you said, I was thinking, I'd love to hear stories, just stories about trees and animals and connecting and having that, totally different perspective about this magical type of thing, this yeah, very attractive and very profound. And I thought about the Lord of the Rings, the these creatures, that live in the forest in Fangorn, the ants, they are the shepherd of the trees, and that's Lynn's favorite character in the movie, I mean, there's so much wisdom and connection, and it's really essential. So yeah, I think for me, some I'm good when I read a story at visualizing it, kind of imagining it. I can hear it. So I see that doing that will probably stimulate my senses, and if I maybe put some good smell around it, uh, it will do something. But yeah, I feel a bit disconnected, that's for sure.
oh,
I mean, completely disconnected.
yeah.
We had a great time, by the river, on your birthday. That was fantastic. I was really, wow, it's beautiful because you and Katrina, you were just such guides, but if I don't have a guide, I'm a little at a loss. So or
Yeah.
or I get upset, because I look at a tree and then I see a car go by and I say, we're really fucking this earth up because there's trees and people and houses and so anyways.
Yeah, brother. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you touched upon it because it's, the connection and the way of being a part of it. It's actually so organic and natural to us, but that's part of that colonization. Like, as Martin Shaw says, bad storytelling casts spells. And so through this colonization and Christianization, we've been told we are separate from nature. And we are told if we are connecting with nature, then we're witches. There's going to be pain there. Right? There's going to be consequences if we try to reconnect with nature. And so there's a part of our own memory in our DNA, which is different than the bone memory. Right? The bone memory is like, no, we know we're of the earth. It's like when you watch Lord of the Rings and you're seeing this intact mythology that was once our reality. Like that Tolkien, he got the majority of that came from like the Poetic Edda, the Norse mythology. Like all of that is just right in there. It's like that's an intact expression. So when we feel that, or if you like watch Avatar or something like that, where it's felt because it's in our bone memory. But in our blood memory, our DNA memory, we have the wounds, the consequences that occurred when we were colonized. Like that process of colonization when across the world is the first thing they do. They disconnect the elders, right? Then they reconnect, they take over the common places and put up their temple or their church. Then they forbid them from doing their spiritual practices. Then they disconnect them from the land and force them to use the food and resources that the colonizers give them. And they know to do that because it's the land and that connection that gives them identity, that gives them their power, that connects them with their story. And if anyone tried to apply their traditions, not only would they get penalized, but it would be taken out on the whole village. And so over time, the people learn to actually suppress their own people just to keep their people safe. So eventually the colonized became colonizers, and we got passed down through these generations. And that element of colonizing and even criticizing these ways, right? That's one of the big blocks, is just like, we don't feel safe to do these practices, and remember, because there has always been consequences. So that's the spells. And so a lot of the elders are saying we're also in a time of breaking enchantments. We're breaking the spells that have bound us. And so there is that important element here where we want to remember this indigenous psychology. And there's almost might be even red flags that come up when we say that. Like, oh, I don't know what's indigenous. What right do we have for this kind of thing? But that's why we want to come back to the stories. That's why we're coming back. There's no teachings. It's coming back to the experiences, the stories, going out onto the land and learning to listen in that way that the stories become available to us. We say we're trailing the invisible paths to what are the unteachable learnings, that which will only be available to you in the mountain, to you in that moist air, just as the dawn comes into the day. No, that becomes your own, and no one can take that from you. Yeah. Thank you, Laura. It's very, very special. Oh, Jen.
Oh, thank you for all that. What I loved your share. I wrote down a bunch of little quotes and notes, but what really came through for me was when you were talking about, and it was kind of in the beginning. You said how we separate ourselves from creation, and what really came through from a colonized perspective too is that like this belief that I am my only creator, that I have to control everything that happens to me, and so I have to keep it really organized and compartmentalized in order to keep just track of it all. I to keep it kind of tight and together so it's not falling all over the place. And what really came through was the remembering that yes, I am co-creational as all beings are, but I'm also have been created and am being created at all times by other things that are seen, unseen, maybe we're of the past, but are operating into the future. Like all of those elements are circulating around me and through me. And surrender is so hard. I think especially for westernized people, to like give up that control. And we don't really teach surrender. You know, we teach all the things that kind of get us to surrender, but
Yeah.
then we're at that edge, right? And then, oh, I can't just fall over because who will I be and how will I, get to work tomorrow and who are going to pay the bills? And what if I wake up 10 years from now, like naked and hairy? Like, what's, all the things, all the fears come through.
Yeah.
And I really love the idea of like being able to fully trust surrender because that those forces that are consistently creating me and molding me and moving through me in answers to like those prayers, like they're also wanting of the same kind of things that we all are wanting, like space to exist and to dream freely and peace and love and belonging. So what of that should not be trusted? And I forget that. I forget that I'm not the only one creating my own reality.
Mm.
And so that was really helpful that to have that come through and like, oh yeah, like spirit is creating me and I'm creating things that are, I may never see or touch, and you're creating me, and we're creating children that were born 1,000 years ago, and that whole circular, spherical, spiral, transcendent, emergent movement of life and death and the eating and the compost and the bringing it all through. It was just like, oh yeah, like I can trust that and I don't have to control that. And that feels very decolonized for me. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. It reminds me of a quote from a song that we would sing in one of our wilderness schools. And it said, we are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. You know, like all that.
We are the circle of love.
Oh
The
yeah.
light. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are our grandmother's prayers. Yes.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, thank you for
yeah.
this remember.
Yeah. Thank you for that beautiful, rich share, Jen. Yeah. Hmm. That's such an important aspect. Like as humans, we've been so conditioned we're on our own and we have to fight for life. That's one of the colonized psychology is that we have been conditioned to be in this adversarial psychology. That we have to battle against life. We have to conquer our careers, manipulate our relationships in life, and we have to manipulate our health and so forth. Where when we come close in, it's just like, what are the elements? How is nature expressing through me? How do I nourish the process that is a part of me? How do I tend to that part of me? And then now we're back into that reciprocal relationship. And that's the common thread in an indigenous psychology. It's all reciprocal. What can I contribute? How do I nourish what I love so what I love can continue to nourish me? Mm, yeah. So yeah, it's a process of remembering. Yeah. And I love how I've been on this process of decolonizing my mind. Once, as soon as I realized how I was colonized, my mind and my psychology was colonized, I was horrified because I was with all these native elders down in the Southwest and I was acting from a colonized mindset. I had beautiful, good intentions, wanting to learn. And thankfully for their grace and their beauty, they helped me come in and they helped show a different way of approaching the elders, approaching a way of learning where it wasn't transactional. I'm like, I'm here to take. It's like, what are you here to contribute? How can you earn entrance into these teachings and not earn entrance in our colonized way where it's like, oh, I got to prove myself. It's earning in a way of me just nourishing. It's me being a willingness to just show up. Yeah. Yeah. But even today, I find I'm still in such a colonized mind. And it's actually a beautiful unweaving process. There's this point where, you realize how colonized our mind are, the harm we're even doing in our everyday life. And then so there's some grief tending, and then there's anger, and then there's shame, and then there's just forgiveness of recognizing, uh for lack of better words, we're a bit of a victim of this conditioning. We could have compassion and love for this, and we can be part of that song that's now missing. And that's where the healing comes in, that ancestral healing comes in. That's why it's so important we do this. Yeah. Mm. Who else would like to lean in and share? What got stirred inside of you? Whoa, bright light. Thank you, Jen. Yeah. Mm,
I can share.
thank you.
Um, yeah, I'm practicing not thinking about what I'm going to share before I share.
Way of counsel. That's it.
Yes. So, first of all, thank you, Chavito, for that. And I feel every time you open your mouth, or even don't, just in your presence, I feel a sense of re-anchoring into what's real.
Mm,
And um, that's something that I think all of us on some level, whether we're aware of it or not, we're hungry for.
mm,
um, and I think we're also really, I know I find myself really hungry, not just for the real, not just for the authentic, but also to go to places where it's not, there isn't so much noise,
mm,
right? And I think all of our lives, one way or another, we like, unless we're living on a mountaintop, it's even then sometimes we have to do our broadcasts from the mountaintop. But yeah, right. Even then, it's a lot of noise, and I think it really, I've embarked on some journeys with you and some of my own, and I know that I want to. I feel like such a beginner. Like I feel like such a. I'm so still have so much to learn,
mm,
so much to learn. But what I have really gained is this sense of um, finally letting go somewhat of the noise and
mm,
being able to step into something that's different.
mm,
And that can feel really scary at first. It can feel really uncertain. But every time I've been caught by earth and nourished by um, like a grace that goes beyond words. And so I'm really excited to explore this further with you and perhaps with you all. And I just really want to thank you for what you do and what the teachings and the learnings that come through you, both the verbal and the nonverbal. They're just extraordinary, and
mm.
I can't thank you enough for them. So I'm excited. That's my share.
Oh, well, thank you, Katrina.
Mm,
Mm, oh, yeah. I think it's important to speak into how, restoring the silence is a discipline. And even up here on the mountain, I'm surrounded by so much beauty. There's still a discipline involved in me to not get caught up in the interweb and all the stories that are trying to hijack me, to hijack my emotions and my energetic state and the ways I want to contribute to the world. I can get so consumed in it. And so there is this discipline that no matter where we are, is like, how do we want to tune in? How do we want to walk this path in a good way? You know, like the Dene, they call that word wholesale, right? Which means to walk in beauty, way tuned in. Yeah. Thank you, Katrina. Mm. Mm. Any last shares that came up for you? You like to speak into the circle? Okay. Again, for those who are already part of this journey that's coming up, or speech. Oh, Emily, did you want to speak in? I just thought you just come in.
Sure, I can.
Cool.
I guess I fell into the first live that I caught was the Coyote Medicine.
Home.
And I'm blown away that even the ones I've listened to since that are on YouTube and Spotify, that everything is just resonating so deeply. And even in the process of listening tonight, last night while I was sitting outside, a tree fell down about 25 feet from me across the driveway. But like I was totally safe, but I just heard it and felt it blindly because it was dark. And it was really intense. And of course, like I was talking to someone and I said, oh, you know, and they said, oh, it must have startled you. And I was like, actually, the air conditioner kicking on startles me more than the tree. Because the tree wasn't a threat to me. It was organic. And I knew I was physically safe from it, even though it was intense. And in listening tonight, I'm realizing even more so than last night that there is a part of me that's ready to be shed. And it's time. So I'm very excited for this community.
Oh, I'm very honored you came in.
Yeah. Thank you all. I'm blown away by what is clicking in the synapses that are reconnecting.
Right. That's what I think my favorite thing about this whole journey has been. It's always felt more like a journey of remembering.
Yeah.
And a lot of these.
It's like a validation.
Yes.
Right. It's like there's something that I've always known I didn't fit in, nothing works and everything's crazy. And how do people live like this? But realizing that there's other people that feel that same way.
Yeah.
And it's just having the space and the support to live it in action instead of just knowing, right?
Oh, yes. That's it. Yeah. When I was first learning a lot of this, I was in India and I was learning with my babas and learning Ayurvedic medicine. And I think Ayurvedic medicine has to be the most detailed relationship with nature that I have yet come across. And every part of it was like, yes, yes, yes. There was no effort in the process of learning. It was just validation, just remembering. It's just giving me permission to know what I know inside of me and giving me permission to live it. And especially in India, they live as they have lived for thousands of years. They're still intact. And even though there's technology and everything else around them, crazy looking infrastructure, don't know how it all works, but that's part of their magic. And it's just, remembering ourselves home.
Yes, and that is exactly what it feels like. Any time that I've taken any training, I've always felt like it was just giving me a new definition for what I already knew. Giving me the words to describe it in this lifetime.
Home.
So this is resonating like that, but even more deeply.
Yeah.
Because there's something about that action, that accountability that seems to be felt. And it's one of the things I struggle with, right? Is actually moving forward in all of that, because it is embodying any of it is difficult, or can be difficult when we're not ready to let go of the other stuff, that noise.
Absolutely. Well, especially when our whole system is based on the colonized way that keeps us distracted and disconnected. It's its own form of activism to live in an organic, natural way.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Just wanted to add something. I feel like probably most of us, if not all of us, have been on this path for a long time, alone, or really feeling alone. And I think now the universe, that nature support is there, and it's making it much, there's more support there for us to find each other, to come together. And now when we begin to do the work, it's so incredibly dynamic, fast paced, and we are evolving very quickly now. And thank goodness I have all of you in my life as I do that work. And you're helping me and I'm helping you. We're helping each other move through this quickly and with incredible guidance. Chavito, you are a master of storytelling. And storytelling kind of sounds, that's not really the right word. I know we're talking about telling stories, but for you, you've tapped into something very authentic, real, deep. It's spirit. And when you open your mouth, it just comes out in such beauty. It touches me so deeply. And I just am, there are no words for how grateful I am to be here right now. And each time I hear you, you say sometimes the same thing, but I guess it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, you know? And it's just absolutely beautiful. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. You know, it's what we're doing is restoring these it's an indigenous way. It's called collaborative learning. Like we pull together. That's why it's called circle work, right? It's like we're all here to contribute something, you know, and we let these other ways, these traditional ways, be the facilitator, and yeah, we help each other. We can't do this without each other, and that's part of the decolonizing process, is to remember not to try to do it alone, to be part of the conversations. Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I can't tell you guys how excited I am for Earth Speech and what that's going to open up for all of us, and the connections and the elders and wisdom keepers that are about to come in. I'm excited for the rituals of reconciliation with the land and the people and our own wounds. Really a lot of ritual work in this, and yeah, it's special. Yeah. So again, for those of you who aren't already a part of it, you can go to our website at treeoftotems.com and look under upcoming for Earth Speech, or you can just email me directly at learning@treeoftotems.com and just share why this resonates. We'll get on the phone and connect and share a little more details. But I would love to invite you all in. And as you can see, it's like, you know, the point of this journey is that we can remember how to be that part of the song that's missing, right? Where this is our form of activism. There's this beautiful silent way of just going out there and modeling it, living it, remembering it together. So yeah, I look forward to journeying with all of you. Starts Tuesday. Oh, cool. Guys, have any questions? Just message me. As you guys know, I'm an open book, happy to share. Cool. So as we like to end all our council fires, we like to do our wolf howls or raven calls or duck quacks. If you like to unmute yourself, join in the howling. And here we go.
Oh, you're a dog.
Yeah, that was my dog.
Oh.
Talking my language. I know that.
I love it. All right. Good night.
Love you
everyone.
all.
Much love.
Here.
See you on Tuesday.
Bye.
Om.